Cover that up. You're making the other guests uncomfortable." The words fell like shattered glass across the sun-drenched pool deck. Maya's hand froze halfway to her book, her bare scalp exposed beneath the relentless Caribbean sun. 21 years old, and she'd never felt so small. Around her, tanned bodies lounged in luxury, eyes hidden behind designer sunglasses, but she could feel them turning away. The crew member stood above her, arms crossed, his smile sharp as a blade. But what he didn't know was that the woman reading quietly beside her wasn't just her aunt. She was Admiral Catherine Wells, retired Navy commander and majority shareholder of Oceanic Luxury Lines, and this cruise was about to make history. The Sea of Roses cut through crystalline waters like a floating palace, 17 decks of marble and gold carrying 800 passengers through paradise. On the Prima Class sun deck, white loungers stretched in perfect rows, each one occupied by guests who'd paid premium prices for premium treatment. The air smelled of coconut oil and salt spray, punctuated by the soft clink of champagne glasses and murmured conversations about stock portfolios and summer homes. Maya Harrison sat at the edge of this world, her orange swimsuit bright against her dark skin, a paperback novel resting on her lap. She'd removed her scarf moments earlier, letting the warm breeze touch her scalp for the first time in weeks. The chemotherapy had taken her hair 3 months ago, but today, she wanted to feel the sun without shame, without hiding. Beside her, Aunt Catherine reclined with her eyes closed, a straw hat tilted low over her face. To anyone watching, she was just another wealthy passenger enjoying the voyage. No one recognized the woman who'd commanded naval operations across 2 oceans, who'd negotiated international maritime treaties, who now sat on the board of directors for the very cruise line, ferrying them through the Bahamas. "You okay, sweetheart?" Catherine asked without opening her eyes, her voice barely audible over the ambient music drifting from hidden speakers. Maya nodded, then realized her aunt couldn't see her. "Yeah, it feels good to not hide. You never had anything to hide from." But the world didn't always agree. Maya had learned that lesson young, learned it again when her diagnosis came, learned it every time someone stared too long at the grocery store, at the coffee shop, at the gates before boarding this very ship. Cancer had stolen her hair, but it was cruelty that made her feel like she'd lost something more precious. Her right to exist in public spaces without explanation. She opened her book, trying to lose herself in the story, when footsteps approached. Heavy, deliberate footsteps that stopped directly in front of her lounger, casting a shadow across the pages. "Excuse me?" Maya looked up. A crew member stood above her, mid-30s, with slicked back hair and a uniform that seemed tailored just a touch too tight. His name tag read, Marcus Holloway, Guest Services Coordinator. His expression was polite, professional, but his eyes were cold. "Yes?" Maya said, her voice smaller than she'd intended. Marcus glanced around the deck, then back at her, lowering his voice just enough to seem confidential but loud enough that nearby guests could hear. "I'm going to need you to cover your head. This is a premium sun deck, and we maintain certain aesthetic standards for our Prima Class guests." The words hit her like a physical blow. Maya's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her hand instinctively reached for the scarf she'd draped over her beach bag, shame flooding through her before her mind could even process what was happening. "Aesthetic standards?" The voice came from beside her, sharp and clear. Catherine hadn't moved, hadn't opened her eyes, but every word carried the weight of command. Marcus shifted his attention to her, his smile tightening. "Ma'am, I understand this may seem... My niece paid $17,000 for this suite," Catherine interrupted, still perfectly still beneath her hat. "Are you suggesting that her medical condition violates some policy I wasn't informed of during booking?" Marcus's jaw clenched slightly. "It's not about policy, ma'am. It's about the comfort of all our guests. We've received concerns." "Concerns?" Catherine sat up slowly, removing her sunglasses with deliberate care. Her eyes, sharp, gray, and absolutely merciless, fixed on Marcus like targeting lasers. "What specifically concerned these guests? That a young woman recovering from cancer treatment had the audacity to enjoy the sun she paid for?" Around them, conversations had stopped, heads turned, some curious, others uncomfortable. A few passengers quickly looked away, suddenly fascinated by their phones or the horizon. Marcus maintained his professional smile, but sweat beaded at his hairline despite the ocean breeze. "Ma'am, I'm just doing my job. We pride ourselves on creating an environment where all guests feel comfortable, and sometimes that means making my niece feel like she's not welcome." Catherine's voice never rose, but it cut like steel. "Tell me, Marcus, do you have a specific dress code policy regarding medical conditions? I'd love to see it in writing." We maintain discretionary authority to discretionary authority." Catherine stood now, and though she was barely 5'6", Marcus took an involuntary step backward. "I see. And who authorized you to exercise this discretion? Your deck manager? The cruise director?" Marcus's smile was cracking. "If you'd like to file a formal complaint, there's a process." "Oh, I'm familiar with the process," Catherine said softly. "Very familiar." Maya sat frozen, watching this exchange unfold. Part of her wanted to disappear, to put the scarf back on and make this stop. But another part, the part that had survived 18 months of treatment, that had fought her way back from the edge of death, that part was starting to feel something else: anger. "I'll cover up," Maya said quietly, reaching for her scarf. "No." Catherine's hand gently stopped her. "You won't." Marcus shifted his weight, clearly calculating his next move. "Ladies, I don't want this to escalate. I'm simply trying to—" "You're trying to humiliate a cancer survivor because someone complained that looking at her made them uncomfortable," Catherine said, her voice carrying now across the deck. "Let's be clear about what's actually happening here." A woman 2 loungers over stood abruptly, gathering her things. An elderly couple near the bar exchanged whispers. A teenager with headphones slowly lowered them, listening. "I never said," Marcus began. "You said aesthetic standards," Catherine continued. "You said concerns. You implied that my niece's appearance, her bald head, her cancer-ravaged body that she's fought so hard to keep alive, somehow diminishes the premium experience other guests paid for. Is that not accurate?" Marcus's jaw worked silently. His hand moved to his radio, fingers hovering over the call button. "Go ahead," Catherine said, noticing the gesture. "Call your supervisor. In fact, I insist on it. Get the deck manager up here. Get the cruise director if you can. I think this conversation needs witnesses." "That won't be necessary," Marcus said tightly. "I can see you're upset, and I apologize if—" "If," Catherine's eyebrow arched. "There's no if here, Marcus. You walked up to a young woman who's done nothing wrong and told her to hide herself because her illness offends someone's vacation aesthetic. That's not an if situation. That's a you absolutely did this thing situation." Maya felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of these people who'd watched Marcus humiliate her and done nothing. She'd cried enough in hospital rooms, in bathroom mirrors, in the car after strangers stared. She wouldn't cry here. Catherine must have sensed it because her hand found Maya's shoulder, squeezing gently. "Baby girl, you have nothing to be ashamed of." "I just wanted to enjoy the sun," Maya whispered. "And you will," Catherine said. Then, louder, to Marcus, "You have 10 seconds to apologize to my niece and walk away. Or you can call your supervisor and we'll handle this officially. Your choice." Marcus looked around the deck, seemed to notice for the first time how many people were watching, how many phones had subtly tilted in their direction. His professionalism was a crumbling mask now, irritation bleeding through. "Fine," he said shortly. "I apologize if my approach upset you. It wasn't my intention." The words were mechanical, empty. "Enjoy your afternoon." He turned and walked away, his posture stiff with barely contained anger. Catherine watched him go, her expression unreadable. Maya let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "Thank you," she said softly. "Don't thank me yet," Catherine murmured, settling back into her lounger but keeping her sunglasses off now, her gaze alert. "Men like that don't just walk away. He'll try something else. Maybe we should just go back to the cabin," Maya suggested, hating how defeated she sounded. "Absolutely not." Catherine's voice was firm. "You have every right to be here, and if he wants to push this further, then we'll push back harder." Around them, the deck slowly returned to its previous rhythm. Conversations resuming, drinks being sipped, bodies shifting on loungers. but Maya could still feel eyes on her, could hear the whispers that hadn't quite stopped. A few passengers looked sympathetic. Most just looked uncomfortable, like she was a problem that had intruded on their paradise. She picked up her book again, but the words blurred together. Her hand trembled slightly as she turned the page. 30 feet away, Marcus spoke urgently into his radio, his back to them but his posture screaming frustration. Whatever he was saying, whoever he was talking to, Maya knew Catherine was right. This wasn't over. The afternoon sun climbed higher, turning the pool deck into a shimmering oasis of light and heat. Maya tried to focus on her book, but her mind kept replaying Marcus's words, the way his eyes had swept over her with such casual disdain. She'd faced pity before, endless, suffocating pity from well-meaning strangers. But this was different. This was contempt, dressed up as courtesy. Catherine had returned to her relaxed position, but Maya noticed her aunt's jaw remained tight, her fingers drumming a subtle rhythm against the armrest. A military habit, one that surfaced whenever Catherine was strategizing. "He's coming back," Catherine murmured without opening her eyes. Maya's stomach clenched. She looked up to see Marcus approaching again, but this time he wasn't alone. A woman walked beside him, tall, silver-haired, wearing a crisp white uniform with gold epaulets. Her name tag identified her as Diana Crawford, Deck Operations Manager. "Ladies," Diana began, her voice professionally warm but with an edge of steel beneath it. "I understand there's been some miscommunication this afternoon. I wanted to personally ensure everything is resolved to your satisfaction." Catherine finally opened her eyes, regarding Diana with the expression of someone who'd seen every negotiation tactic invented. "Miscommunication suggests both parties failed to understand each other. That's not what happened here. Your employee clearly communicated that my niece's medical condition makes other guests uncomfortable and that she should hide herself to maintain your aesthetic standards." Diana's smile never faltered, but something flickered in her eyes. "Mr. Holloway has explained the situation, and I assure you that wasn't his intention. We have certain guidelines for all Prima Class areas, and sometimes in the execution—" "Show me the guidelines," Catherine interrupted quietly. "I'm sorry? The guidelines. The written policy that states passengers recovering from cancer treatment must cover their heads to access premium deck areas. I'd like to see it." Diana's pause lasted only a heartbeat, but it was enough. "Our policies are designed to ensure all guests enjoy a comfortable—" "That's not an answer," Catherine said. "Either you have a written policy or you don't. Which is it?" Marcus shifted his weight behind Diana, his expression carefully neutral, but Maya caught the tightness around his eyes. He was angry, not remorseful, not embarrassed. Angry. Diana's professional mask remained intact. "Mrs. Wells? Catherine Wells?" Something changed. Diana's eyes widened fractionally, her posture stiffening almost imperceptibly. The name meant something to her. "Admiral Wells? Retired?" Catherine said mildly. But yes. The silence that followed felt charred. Marcus glanced between the two women, confusion creeping into his expression. He clearly didn't understand why his manager's entire demeanor had just shifted. "Admiral Wells," Diana began again, her tone markedly different now, more careful, more calculated. "I had no idea you were sailing with us. If I'd known, I would have personally ensured that my niece would be treated with basic human dignity." Catherine's voice remained soft, but it cut like a scalpel. "I'm curious why that courtesy should depend on who I am, rather than who she is." Diana's mouth opened, closed. She was recalibrating, Maya realized, trying to find the right approach for someone who clearly held power she hadn't anticipated. "Of course, you're absolutely right," Diana said smoothly. "Mr. Holloway made an error in judgment, and I apologize on behalf of Oceanic Luxury Lines. We pride ourselves on inclusivity, and this incident falls far short of our standard. Your employee told my niece to cover her bald head because it made paying guests uncomfortable," Catherine said. "That's not an error in judgment. That's discrimination, and I'd like to know what you intend to do about it." Marcus finally spoke, his voice tight. "I never said she had to cover up. I suggested—" "You said cover that up," Maya interrupted, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. Both Diana and Marcus turned to look at her, and for a moment she almost lost her nerve. But she thought about every hospital visit, every pitying stare, every whispered comment she'd pretended not to hear. You said I was making other guests uncomfortable. You said there were aesthetic standards. I was trying to be diplomatic, Marcus said, his professional veneer cracking slightly. Some guests had complained. Which guests? Catherine leaned forward. I'd like their names. Diana raised a placating hand. Admiral Wells, I don't think... Because I've been watching this deck for 2 hours, Catherine continued, and not one person has approached you or Mr. Holloway to complain about my niece. So either you're lying about complaints to justify discriminatory behavior, or you're protecting guests who think a cancer survivor is too ugly for their premium vacation experience. Which is it? The question hung in the air like smoke. Nearby passengers had stopped even pretending not to listen. A young couple at the pool's edge watched openly. An older man lowered his newspaper, his expression unreadable. Diana's smile had finally disappeared. Admiral, perhaps we could discuss this privately. In my office? No, Catherine said flatly. This happened publicly. It gets resolved publicly. Marcus made a sound. Not quite a laugh, not quite a scoff. With all due respect, I was doing my job. Prima Class guests expect a certain experience, and part of my responsibility is maintaining that atmosphere. If someone's appearance is disruptive, finish that sentence, Catherine said, her voice dropping to a deadly calm. Please, tell me exactly how my niece's appearance is disruptive. Marcus seemed to realize he'd stepped into quicksand. He looked to Diana for support, but the manager was staring at him with barely concealed horror. I didn't mean, Marcus began. You meant exactly what you said, Catherine cut him off. You look at a young woman fighting for her life and see a problem that needs to be managed. An aesthetic issue. Something to be hidden away so rich people can pretend suffering doesn't exist. That's not fair, Marcus protested. You're twisting my words. I'm repeating them, Catherine said. And I'm asking what you intend to do about it, Ms. Crawford. Diana looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. Mr. Holloway will be reassigned immediately, away from guest-facing roles while we conduct a full review. Reassigned? Catherine's eyebrow arched. Not terminated. We have protocols, Admiral. An investigation must be completed before... How long will that take? A week? 2? And in the meantime, he continues working on this ship, where my niece is a passenger for 6 more days. Diana's jaw tightened. I understand your concern, but we must follow proper procedures. Then follow them quickly, Catherine said, because let me be very clear about what happens otherwise. I sit on your board of directors. I own approximately 18% of oceanic luxury lines through various holdings. And if this incident isn't handled appropriately, I will make it my personal mission to ensure every shareholder, every industry publication, and every regulatory body knows exactly how this company treats vulnerable passengers. The threat landed like a bomb. Diana's face drained of color. Marcus looked between them, finally understanding the magnitude of what he'd walked into. You're on the board? He said stupidly. Retired from the Navy, Catherine confirmed. Not retired from my investment portfolio. Diana recovered first, her mind clearly racing. Admiral Wells, I assure you, we will handle this with the utmost seriousness. Mr. Holloway will be suspended pending investigation, effective immediately. Suspended? Marcus spun toward her. Diana, you can't be serious. I followed protocol. There is no protocol for discriminating against passengers with medical conditions, Diana snapped, her professionalism finally fracturing. You told a cancer survivor to cover her head because she made people uncomfortable. Do you have any idea what kind of liability that creates? I was protecting the brand, Marcus protested. You've said it yourself. Prima Class is about maintaining an exclusive atmosphere. Exclusive doesn't mean excluding people with cancer. Diana's voice rose, drawing more attention. She caught herself, lowering her tone. We're done here. Report to HR immediately. Marcus's face flushed red. He looked at Maya, and for a moment she saw pure hatred flash across his features. Not remorse, not shame, but rage at being caught, at being challenged, at losing. This is insane, he muttered. She's making this into something it's not. Leave! Now! Diana's command left no room for argument. Marcus turned and walked away, his stride stiff with barely controlled fury. Every eye on the deck followed him until he disappeared through the doorway leading to the interior corridors. Diana turned back to Catherine and Maya, and her professional mask was fully shattered now, revealing something closer to genuine distress. "Admiral Ms. Harrison, I cannot apologize enough. This is not who we are as a company." "Isn't it?" Catherine said quietly. "Because from where I'm sitting, your employee felt comfortable enough to say those things, which suggests this isn't the first time. It's just the first time someone had the power to push back." Diana swallowed hard. "I promise you, we will investigate thoroughly, and we'll review our training procedures to ensure—" "Don't promise me," Catherine interrupted. "Promise her." She nodded toward Maya. For the first time, Diana looked directly at Maya, really looked at her, not as a problem or a situation to manage, but as a person. "Ms. Harrison, I am deeply sorry for what happened today. You deserved better from us, and I will personally ensure this is addressed." Maya nodded slowly, not trusting herself to speak. The adrenaline that had been coursing through her was beginning to fade, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Diana handed Catherine a business card. "My direct line. If anything else happens, anything at all, please contact me immediately." After she left, the deck remained unusually quiet. Passengers who'd been watching quickly looked away, suddenly fascinated by their drinks or books or phones. No one approached. No one offered words of support. Maya felt the weight of their silence like a physical thing. They'd watched, they'd heard, and now they were pretending it never happened. "You okay?" Catherine asked softly. Maya shook her head. "I just wanted to enjoy the sun. That's all I wanted." Catherine pulled her into a gentle embrace, careful of Maya's fragile frame. "I know, baby. I know." But as they sat there, Maya couldn't shake the image of Marcus's face as he'd left, the anger, the entitlement, the absolute conviction that he'd done nothing wrong. Men like that didn't just disappear because they got suspended. They found ways to make you pay for embarrassing them. If you believe no one should be humiliated for fighting cancer, leave a comment sharing where you're watching from. Your voice matters. The next morning, Maya woke to the gentle rocking of the ship and the muted sound of seagulls beyond her cabin window. For a blessed moment, she forgot about yesterday, about Marcus, about the stairs, about the suffocating weight of being unwelcome in a space she'd paid to occupy. Then reality crashed back, and her stomach knotted. Catherine was already awake, sitting at the small desk with her laptop open, reading glasses perched on her nose. She glanced up when Maya stirred. "Morning, sweetheart. How'd you sleep?" "Okay," Maya lied, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. Catherine studied her for a moment, then closed the laptop. "We don't have to go back to the pool deck today. We can stay in, order room service, watch movies." "No," Maya surprised herself with the firmness in her voice. "I'm not hiding." Pride flickered across Catherine's face. "That's my girl." But as they prepared for the day, Maya carefully tying a turquoise scarf around her head this time, a small concession to the anxiety gnawing at her, neither of them could shake the feeling that yesterday's confrontation had only been the beginning. They were right. By the time they reached the main promenade deck for breakfast, whispers followed them like a shadow. Passengers glanced their way, some with sympathy, others with something that looked uncomfortably like resentment. A middle-aged woman in a tennis visor actually moved tables when they sat down at the outdoor cafe. "Don't look," Catherine murmured, but Maya had already seen. The morning stretched awkwardly. They explored the ship's art gallery, attended a cooking demonstration in the main theater, tried to pretend everything was normal. But everywhere they went, Maya felt the weight of being watched, being discussed, being the problem that had disrupted everyone's luxury vacation. It was during lunch in the Garden Terrace restaurant that everything changed. Maya was picking at a Caesar salad, her appetite still missing, when she noticed a commotion near the entrance. Staff members were gathering, speaking urgently into radios. Passengers craned their necks trying to see what was happening. Then Diana Crawford appeared, moving quickly through the restaurant with 2 security officers flanking her. They stopped at a table 3 rows away, where Marcus Holloway sat in civilian clothes, eating lunch as if nothing had happened. "Mr. Holloway?" Diana's voice carried across the suddenly quiet dining room. "I need you to come with us." Marcus looked up, his expression shifting from confusion to anger in seconds. "I'm on my meal break. This can wait." "It can't." Diana's tone left no room for negotiation. "Now, please." Something in her voice, or perhaps in the presence of security, made Marcus stand. But as he did, his gaze swept the restaurant and landed directly on Maya. The hatred in his eyes was unmistakable, raw and unfiltered. "This is because of her," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Because she played the cancer card and got some retired admiral to throw her weight around. I'm losing my job because I tried to maintain standards." Mr. Holloway, one of the security officers, stepped forward, hand resting casually on his belt. "Let's not make this harder than it needs to be." Marcus's jaw worked furiously. For a moment, Maya thought he might actually charge toward her, but instead he laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. "You people are unbelievable. One complaint from someone with connections and suddenly I'm the villain. But none of you know what it's like trying to keep this place running, dealing with entitled passengers who think, enough." Diana's voice cracked like a whip. "You're terminated, effective immediately. These officers will escort you to collect your belongings and disembark at our next port." The silence that followed was absolute. Every eye in the restaurant was locked on the scene unfolding before them. Marcus's face flushed scarlet. "You're making a huge mistake. When the union hears about this, the union has already been informed," Diana interrupted, "along with our legal department and HR. There's security footage, Mr. Holloway, of you harassing a passenger, of you making discriminatory comments. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's grounds for immediate termination." The fight seemed to drain out of Marcus then, replaced by something darker, a cold, calculating rage. He looked at Maya one last time, and she had to force herself not to flinch under the intensity of his stare. "I hope you're proud of yourself," he said quietly. "You ruined my career because your feelings got hurt." "You ruined your career," Catherine said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was calm, almost gentle, which somehow made it more devastating. "The moment you chose cruelty over compassion, the moment you looked at someone fighting for their life and saw only an inconvenience." Marcus opened his mouth, closed it. Then he turned and walked out, flanked by security, leaving a wake of stunned silence behind him. Diana approached their table, and Maya noticed the exhaustion in the older woman's face, the lines of stress around her eyes. "Miss Harrison, Admiral Wells, I wanted you to hear it directly. After reviewing all footage and interviewing staff, we've terminated Mr. Holloway's employment. He'll be removed from the ship at Nassau tomorrow morning." "Thank you," Catherine said simply. Diana nodded, then hesitated. "For what it's worth, 2 other crew members came forward after yesterday, with their own stories about Mr. Holloway's behavior toward passengers. An elderly man with Parkinson's, a teenager with severe acne. He had a pattern of targeting people he perceived as," she paused, searching for words, "aesthetically disruptive to the luxury experience." Maya's chest tightened. "How long has he worked here?" 4 years. Diana's expression was grim. "Which means we failed. We failed those passengers, and we failed you. And I'm sorry." After Diana left, the restaurant slowly returned to life. Conversations resuming, cutlery clinking, the world moving forward. But Maya sat frozen, processing what she'd just learned. 4 years. 4 years of Marcus targeting vulnerable people, and no one had stopped him until yesterday. Until Catherine had the power and the resources and the sheer determination to make them listen. "What about everyone else?" Maya said quietly. "Everyone he hurt who didn't have a retired admiral to protect them?" Catherine reached across the table, taking her hand. "That's why what happened matters. Because now there's a record. Now there's accountability. And maybe, hopefully, the next person won't have to fight as hard." That evening, as the ship docked at Nassau and Marcus Holloway was escorted down the gangplank with his belongings, Maya stood on their private balcony and watched him go. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of consequences he'd clearly never expected to face. Catherine joined her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "You okay?" Maya thought about that. Was she okay? No. She was exhausted, emotionally drained, still carrying the sting of Marcus's words like a bruise. But she was also something else, something she hadn't felt in months of hospital rooms and uncertainty. She was powerful, not because of Catherine's influence, though that had certainly helped, but because she'd refused to disappear, because she'd stood her ground when someone tried to shame her for surviving, because her existence, her bald head, her fragile body, her refusal to hide, had forced an entire system to confront its ugliness. "I'm getting there," Maya said finally. "And, Aunt Catherine, thank you for seeing me, for protecting me, for not letting him make me invisible." Catherine pulled her into a gentle embrace. "Baby girl, you were never invisible. Some people just need their eyes opened." Below, Marcus disappeared into the crowded port, swallowed by the evening rush of tourists and vendors. The Sea of Roses prepared to set sail again, minus one crew member but carrying something new. A reckoning, however small, with the cruelty that had been allowed to flourish in silence. That night, Maya removed her scarf before bed and studied her reflection in the mirror. Her scalp was still pale, still marked by the ravages of treatment. But when she looked now, she didn't see someone who needed to hide. She saw someone who'd fought 2 battles in one day, one against cancer, one against contempt, and won them both. The next morning, she returned to the Prima Class sun deck, without a scarf, without apology. And when a couple at the nearby lounger smiled at her, a real smile, warm and genuine, she smiled back. The sun felt warmer somehow. The ocean looked endless and beautiful. And Maya Harrison, 21 years old and still fighting for her life, finally allowed herself to feel what she'd been denied for too long. Welcome. Stories like this don't go viral by accident. They spread because people like you decide they matter. If Maya's fight inspired you, prove it. Subscribe, like, share this video with 3 people right now. Drop a comment with your city so we know this message is reaching every corner of the world. Be the reason someone else finds the courage to stand tall. Subscribe now, because silence protects the cruel, but your voice protects the vulnerable.